Population dynamics. Your learning goals for today are: read and explain the following population growth charts, J-curves and S-curves. Explain what carrying capacity means and give some examples of limiting factors. Describe how overpopulation can cause habitat damage and its effect on future population numbers and growth. Population growth. A species will increase its population exponentially if resources are unlimited. In other words, if a population has all the food, shelter, water, etc. that it needs, its population will grow exponentially. Like this graph. Here we start with a few individuals. They have everything they need. Pretty soon their population increases dramatically. This is called a J-curve because the shape of the curve is a J. Limiting factors are factors that slow the increase in population and eventually cause it to stabilize at a sustainable population. So here's our growth chart. We start with a few individuals. They have everything they need. At this point, their resources are pretty much unlimited for the size of the population. But the population growth begins to slow down as they begin to run out of resources. And we call these things that cause population to slow down limiting factors. And some of the possible limiting factors would be competition among members of the population for resources, predators, disease, and the amount of habitat that they have available. And the limiting factors will cause the population numbers to stabilize at some level. That level we call the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is the largest number of individuals that the environment can support sustainably. Sustainably means forever, ongoing. So the carrying capacity of an environment is the number of individuals that can live there from now until something changes. If nothing changes, then that's the number of individuals that can live there forever and ever. So that's what we call the carrying capacity. So here is a more realistic growth chart. Here's a bass. Say they become introduced into a pond. They're going to have unlimited resources. They're going to grow exponentially, but then there's going to become competition for limited resources. The limiting factors are going to come in. How much prey is available, how many places there are to spawn, how many places there are to hide. And these limiting factors are going to cause the population to stabilize. Now, the population may vary a little bit from year to year. Maybe this is a bad year. Maybe it's cold and there aren't as many fish for the bass to eat. Maybe this is a good year. There's plenty of fish for the bass to eat. They've got lots of places to spawn and their population goes up a little bit. So the carrying capacity isn't exactly a straight line. It's going to vary a little bit from year to year depending on conditions. All right, so hit pause and answer these questions. And when you're ready, hit play. What type of growth is represented by a J-curve? Well, that's exponential growth. Name 3 limiting factors. Well, 3 limiting factors could be predators, the amount of food that's available, and how big the habitat is. Let's look at some examples. We have white-tailed deer here in this area, but over the years we've killed off their predators. So the deer really have no predators other than being hit by cars. There's very few hunters in this area. So the deer populations have exploded. This is a picture from Shenandoah National Park, and this is way too many deer. Deer are browsers. They eat plants, they eat twigs, they eat leaves off trees. This is a deer that doesn't have any plants on the ground to eat, so it's eating the leaves on the trees. And you notice that there are no leaves on these trees below this line. This is called a browse line. This is as high up as the deer can reach on the trees. Here's a picture from a park near us. Look on the ground. Do you see much growing on the ground? Almost nothing. And if you look in the distance, you can see the browse line. This is as far up in the trees as the deer can reach. So what's happened is there are so many deer that they're destroying their habitat. They've eliminated the low-growing grasses and flowers. They've eaten the leaves off the trees as far up as they can go. How many deer can live in this area now? How much is there for them to eat? Very little. So when populations get too large, they can damage the habitat. And once they damage the habitat, the carrying capacity, the number of individuals that can live there sustainably on an ongoing basis, sometimes goes down. And we see this all over the place. When populations exceed the carrying capacity, they can cause the environment to be harmed, and that actually lowers the carrying capacity. Here's a pasture, and this rancher has way too many sheep here for the available grass, and they've eaten all the grass off these slopes. Erosion has removed the soil, and now there's no grass here. So the available pasture that they have, the available food that's available to them, is much less than it would be if the rancher had put the proper number of animals on this pasture. But he's exceeded the carrying capacity, and they're slowly destroying their environment and lowering the number of animals that can survive there. This is another example of an overgrazed pasture. They've removed the grasses, and now we have erosion. And the erosion is going to carry away the topsoil, and then when the topsoil's gone, there won't be much left to eat because there won't be any plants. And here's a great example. Here's a fence. This is a nice pasture. Cows can live here and graze here sustainably for eons. On this side, it's been overgrazed. They remove all the plants. When the plants are gone, the soil erodes, and then nothing can grow. So very few cattle can survive on this side of the fence. This side of the fence would be able to sustain a larger cattle herd. All right, so hit pause and answer these questions. When you're ready, hit play. What can happen to the environment if a population exceeds its carrying capacity? The population can damage the environment and lower its carrying capacity so fewer animals can live there in the future. What does sustainably mean? Sustainably means ongoing into the future. Why are predators important in an ecosystem? Well, if you remove the predators, that's a limiting factor on the population. The population will grow exponentially, and eventually, when that population exceeds its carrying capacity, it will damage the environment. So predators are important to keep populations under control so that they don't harm their environment. So predator and prey relationships are important in ecology. The size of the predator population depends on the size of the prey population. That just makes common sense. When the number of prey animals goes up, there's more for the predators to eat. They can raise more young, so the number of predators goes up. But when the number of prey animals goes down, there's less for the predators to eat. Their populations are going to decrease as well. So if we were to make a population graph of predators and prey, we would see their numbers fluctuate up and down. And they would fluctuate up and down together. So let's look at this. Here the prey population increases. As it increases, there's more for the predators to eat. They can raise more young, so their population is going to increase. But as their population increases, it becomes a limiting factor on the prey population, and the prey population will decrease. When the prey population decreases, there's less for the predators to eat. They can't raise as many young. The older ones are going to starve to death, and their population is going to go down. And this cycle repeats over and over again. There's a lag period between when the prey population increases and the predator population increases because it takes time for the predators to reproduce.